The human fleet didn't bother with orbital bombardment warnings or surrender demands. Admiral Sunmi had made her position clear: return the children or face extinction. Since the Thylac had proven unable to return children who had already freed themselves, the humans proceeded with extinction. The first wave of attacks targeted every Thylac military installation on the planet. Weapons factories, training centers, command bunkers, all were reduced to smoking craters within the first hour. The message was clear. This wasn't a negotiation or a rescue mission. This was punishment. Captain Bora led the Marine assault teams toward the gladiatorial complex. Her ships had detected massive energy signatures from the facility, suggesting either heavy fighting or major systems failures. What they found when they landed was beyond anything they had expected. The complex was under complete prisoner control. Human children had not only escaped their captivity, but had led a full-scale rebellion that freed over 2,000 beings from dozens of different species. The Thylac guards who remained were barricaded in small sections, desperately trying to avoid the organized prisoner forces hunting them. Colonel Jihoon moved through the complex with his Marines, following clear directional signs that someone had posted in multiple languages. The signs led them directly to what had been the main arena, now converted into a command center. What they found there would be talked about in military academies for generations. June sat at a tactical display, calmly coordinating the movement of multi-species units throughout the complex. Around him, adult warriors from 8 different civilizations waited for orders from a 13-year-old human boy. Hana was at a computer terminal, managing the complex's systems with the skill of a professional technician. She had improved the efficiency of every major system, and was currently downloading intelligence files that would expose Thylac slave operations across the galaxy. Wujin was briefing a group of freed prisoners on assault tactics, teaching them how to clear the remaining Thylac positions without unnecessary casualties. His strategic planning showed a level of military thinking that impressed even veteran Marines. Colonel Jihoon, Earth Marines, the officer announced as he entered the command center. June looked up from his tactical display and smiled. For the first time in weeks, he looked like what he was: a kid who was very happy to see adults from home. Sir, we have secured 6 sections of the complex and liberated 93% of the prisoners. Casualty reports show minimal losses among freed prisoners and significant losses among Thylac forces. We have established medical facilities, supply networks, and communications. Colonel Jihoon stared at the 13-year-old boy who had just given him a professional military briefing. Behind June, he could see battle maps, prisoner logs, and tactical assessments that would have impressed a general staff. Status of human personnel? Jihoon asked. All children accounted for and unharmed, Wujin reported, standing at attention like a soldier. We have established secure zones and maintained group cohesion throughout the operation. Hana looked up from her computer terminal. I've downloaded all their intelligence files, Colonel. The Thylac Empire has slave operations in 47 systems. I have the locations, ship schedules, and prisoner counts for all of them. The Marine colonel found himself in the strange position of receiving intelligence reports from a 7-year-old girl who had somehow hacked an entire alien computer. Network, outstanding work, he said, because there was nothing else he could say. What do you need from us? June gestured to the tactical display. We still have Thylac forces in 3 sections of the complex. They're holding approximately 200 prisoners as hostages. We've been planning an assault, but we wanted to wait for additional support. Colonel Jihoon realized that these children had not just survived their captivity, they had turned it into a military campaign. They had rescued other prisoners, gathered intelligence, and were now planning complex assault operations. We'll handle the remaining Thylac forces, he said. You've done enough. With respect, sir, Wujin interrupted. We know this facility better than anyone. Our prisoner allies have been fighting alongside us for days. It would be more efficient if we coordinated the final assault together. The colonel found himself nodding in agreement. The children were right. They had established command relationships and tactical knowledge that his Marines would need time to develop. The final assault on the Thylac holdouts was a masterpiece of combined operations. Human Marines provided heavy weapons and advanced equipment, while the freed prisoners, led by the human children, used their knowledge of the facility to guide the attacks. Hana controlled the complex's systems, shutting down life support to Thylac positions while maintaining it for prisoner areas. June coordinated the movement of 6 different assault teams through the complex's maze-like corridors. Wujin led a specialized unit that neutralized Thylac weapons positions before the main assault began. The fighting was over in less than 3 hours. The remaining Thylac forces surrendered when they realized they were facing not just human Marines but an organized army of freed prisoners led by the same children they had tried to cage Arena Master. Kithion was found hiding in his private command bunker, surrounded by the last of his guard units. When Colonel Jihoon reached him, Kithion immediately tried to surrender. "Please, we didn't know they were human young. We thought they were just another species. We surrender completely." "You surrendered to them," Jihoon said, gesturing toward the children who had followed the Marines into the bunker. "I'm just here to pick up our kids." Kithion stared at the human children who had destroyed his empire. Hana was still carrying the improvised computer interface she had used to hack his systems. June wore the tactical vest he had taken from a Thylac officer. Wujin carried weapons he had crafted from facility components. "How?" Kithion whispered. "How did children accomplish this?" Colonel Jihoon smiled grimly. "They're not just children, Arena Master. They're human children. There's a difference." Admiral Sunmi arrived at the complex as the final reports were being filed. She found her Marines being briefed by the rescued children on Thylac slave operations throughout the galaxy. The kids had not just survived their ordeal, they had gathered enough intelligence to shut down the entire Thylac Empire. "Admiral," June reported when he saw her, "we have complete intelligence on Thylac operations. 47 systems, over 50,000 prisoners. Hana has all their computer files and communication codes." Sunmi looked at the 13-year-old boy who was briefing her like a senior intelligence officer. "Recommendations?" "Immediate liberation missions for all prisoner facilities," Wujin answered. "We have their schedules, so we know exactly when and where to intercept their slave ships." "The other prisoners want to help," Hana added. "The Zentorians and Vec have offered to guide liberation missions in their home systems." Admiral Sunmi realized that her rescue mission had become something much larger. The children had not just escaped, they had organized a galaxy-wide resistance movement. "Outstanding work," she said finally. "All of you." War Master Vorthak was brought before Admiral Sunmi in chains. He had been captured trying to escape the planet in a civilian transport. "You caged human children," Sunmi said simply. "We didn't know," Vorthak protested. "We thought they were just another species. We never meant to threaten Earth." "You didn't threaten Earth," Sunmi replied coldly. "You threatened our children. There's a difference." The War Master was silent for a moment. Then he asked the question that had been haunting him since he realized what he had captured. "What will happen to my people?" Admiral Sunmi looked at the Thylac leader who had made the worst mistake in galactic history. "Your empire is finished. Your slave operations are being shut down. Your military is destroyed. Your government has surrendered. But our people will live," Sunmi interrupted, "because our children asked us to show mercy to the civilian population. They said that revenge should be proportional and that innocent beings shouldn't suffer for their leaders' crimes." Vorthak stared at her in disbelief. "The children asked for mercy?" "Yes," Sunmi said. "They're better people than you deserve. But they're also human, which means they understand the difference between justice and cruelty." The aftermath of the Thylac incident became known throughout the galaxy as the Children's War. It was the first and only time that human young had been captured by hostile aliens. It was also the last time anyone was foolish enough to try. The Thylac Empire was dissolved. Their slave operations were shut down by combined human and allied forces. Over 50,000 prisoners were freed and returned to their home worlds. But the real legacy of the Children's War was the new galactic law that was unanimously passed by every civilized species. Article 1. Human children are not to be harmed, captured, or threatened under any circumstances. Article 2. Any violation of Article 1 will result in immediate military response from Earth with no possibility of negotiation or surrender. Article 3. The human definition of children includes any human under the age of 18, regardless of their demonstrated capabilities. The law became known as the Children's Protection Act, and it carried the strongest enforcement mechanisms in galactic history. The human fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Thylac system like an avenging storm. 18 warships appeared in perfect formation, their weapons already charged and targeting systems active. The sight sent panic through every Thalic vessel in the area. Admiral Sunmi opened communications on all frequencies. Her voice was calm, cold, and absolutely terrifying in its controlled fury. "This is Admiral Sunmi of the Earth Deep Space Fleet. You have taken our children. Return them now unharmed, and your deaths will be quick. Harm them in any way, and we will teach your species what extinction looks like." The message was broadcast in 12 different languages, ensuring every species in the system would understand. But the real message wasn't in the words. It was in the massive human fleet that had appeared with military precision and obvious hostile intent. On Thylek Prime, panic spread through the government like wildfire. Emergency meetings were called. Military commanders who had never known fear suddenly understood what it felt like to face certain destruction. Arena Master Kithion was in his command center, desperately trying to regain control of his facility. The human children had now liberated 6 sections of the complex and were systematically freeing every prisoner they could find. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was how they were doing it. Wu Jin had somehow accessed the complex's weapon storage and was distributing arms to the freed prisoners. But he wasn't just handing out weapons randomly. He was organizing military units based on each species' natural abilities. The Zentaurian warriors became his assault teams, using their natural aggression and strength to break through Thylek defensive positions. The Vec engineers became his technical support, helping him understand and sabotage the complex's systems. The Altarian scouts became his intelligence network, mapping out areas that hadn't been explored yet. Hana had done something even more impressive. She had hacked into the complex's main computer system, using techniques that shouldn't have been possible for any creature her age. The security cameras now showed her whatever she wanted to see. The automated doors opened and closed at her command. Even the life support systems were under her control. "How is a 7-year-old child controlling our entire computer network?" Kithion demanded from his chief technician. "Sir, we don't know. She's using access codes that we didn't even know existed. Our own programmers can't figure out how she's doing it." June had accomplished something that terrified the Thylek guards more than anything else. He had convinced the prisoners from different species to work together. Usually, captured beings from various worlds would fight among themselves, making them easier to control. But under June's leadership, natural enemies were cooperating in perfectly coordinated attacks. The 13-year-old human was commanding a multi-species army with the skill of a veteran general. War Master Vorthak arrived at the complex with his personal guard unit, intending to retake control by force. What he found was unlike anything in his military experience. The children had turned the gladiatorial complex into a fortress. They had blocked corridors with improvised barricades, set up ambush points at every intersection, and created communication networks that allowed them to coordinate across the entire facility. When Vorthak's troops tried to advance into the captured sections, they met resistance that stopped them cold. The human children had taught the other prisoners advanced military tactics. Crossfire patterns, coordinated retreats, supply line management, concepts that most species took years to master. "Sir, we can't advance," his lieutenant reported after the 3rd failed assault. "They're fighting like a professional army, not like prisoners." Vorthak stared at the security monitors in disbelief. He watched 7-year-old Hana calmly directing traffic as freed prisoners moved weapons and supplies through corridors she had mapped out. He saw 16-year-old Wu Jin teaching a group of adult Zentaurians how to use improvised explosives. Most disturbing of all, he watched 13-year-old June leading a tactical meeting with representatives from 8 different species. "What are these creatures?" he whispered. His intelligence officer had finally managed to access the complete files on humanity. What he read made him understand why his empire was doomed. "Sir, humans evolved on a Class 12 death world called Earth. The survival requirements were so extreme that only the most adaptable and intelligent could live to reproduce. Their young develop survival instincts and problem-solving abilities that exceed most adult species in the galaxy." The officer continued reading, his voice getting quieter with each fact. "Humans have never lost a war. They defeated the Rigel Confederation despite being outnumbered 10-1. They stopped the Vegan invasion by turning the enemy's own weapons against them. They ended the Centauri conflict by developing new technology in the middle of the battle. But they're just children." Vorthak protested weakly. "Sir, Human children are raised from birth to be independent, resourceful and protective of their family groups. By age 7, they possess survival skills that would challenge trained soldiers from most species. By age 13, they can outthink military strategists. By age 16, they're essentially adult humans with all the tactical abilities that implies. Vorthak felt his world collapsing around him. He had not captured helpless young animals. He had captured the next generation of the galaxy's most dangerous species, and now their parents were coming to get them back. In space, the human fleet was systematically destroying every Thylac military installation in the system. Admiral Sunmi had decided that negotiation was not an option. The Thylac Empire needed to understand that taking human children was not a mistake that could be forgiven. Captain Bora watched her tactical display as human ships eliminated Thylac orbital platforms with surgical precision. "Admiral, the enemy fleet is trying to form a defensive line around the planet." "Ignore them," Sunmi ordered. "Our children are on that planet. Everything else is just in our way." The Thylac fleet had never faced anything like human military doctrine. Most species fought wars using established tactics and predictable strategies. Humans fought wars by adapting faster than their enemies could respond. When the Thylac ships formed traditional battle lines, the human fleet split into hunting groups that attacked from unexpected angles. When the Thylac tried to use their superior numbers, the humans used superior technology and tactics to eliminate multiple targets simultaneously. The battle was over in less than 2 hours. The Thylac fleet was destroyed. Their orbital defenses were eliminated, and human ships were moving into position around Thylac Prime. Kithion tried one last desperate communication with the human fleet. "Admiral Sunmi, please. We surrender. We can negotiate the return of the specimens." The response came immediately, and the cold fury in Admiral Sunmi's voice made every Thylac in the command center step backward. "You don't have specimens, Arena Master. You have our children, and we don't negotiate with people who cage our young. We destroy them." On the planet's surface, the children had accomplished something that would become legend throughout the galaxy. They had completely taken over the gladiatorial complex and established secure zones for over 2,000 freed prisoners. Hana was now running the complex's computer, systems better than the original programmers. She had restored communications, activated emergency medical systems, and even improved the food distribution networks. Wu Jin had organized the freed prisoners into effective military units and was planning an assault on the complex's administrative center. His tactical planning was so advanced that veteran Zentaurian warriors were asking him for strategic advice. June had done something even more remarkable. He had convinced 8 different species to form a unified command structure with him as the leader. Natural enemies were working together, following the orders of a 13-year-old human. "Status report," June said to his multi-species command staff. "All sections secured," reported a Zentaurian captain. "Weapons distributed. Medical facilities established. Computer systems under full control," Hana added. "I can access anything in the complex now." "Prisoner liberation at 93%, Wu Jin said. "Only the maximum security areas are still under Thylac control." June nodded thoughtfully. "Good. Now we prepare for the final phase." "What's the final phase?" asked a VEC engineer. June smiled, and for a moment he looked exactly like what he was, a 13-year-old boy who missed his parents. "We wait for our families to come get us, and then we help them make sure this never happens to anyone else's children." The Thylac Empire was about to learn that capturing human children wasn't just a military mistake. It was a species-ending error in judgment, and the humans were almost ready to teach them that lesson personally. Admiral Sunmi was drinking her morning coffee when the emergency alert came through. The priority signal made her put down her cup and activate the secure communication system in her office. What she heard made her blood turn cold. "Admiral, we've received a distress signal from Research Station Aurora," the communications officer reported. "The message was badly damaged, but we've reconstructed most of it. Thylac raiders have attacked the station and taken human children." Sunmi stood up so fast her chair fell backward. "How many children?" "Unknown, ma'am." The transmission was cut off during the attack, but the station records show 23 children were living there with their families. Within 30 minutes, Admiral Sunmi was in the war room with Fleet Admiral Kangman and the entire Deep Space Command staff. The holographic display showed the location of Aurora Station and the known routes used by Thylac raiders. Options. Kangman said simply, "The Thylac Empire operates gladiatorial games across 12 systems," Intelligence Officer Park reported. "If they took our children, they're most likely heading to Thylac Prime for processing and training." "Training for what?" asked Admiral Sunmi, though she already knew the answer. "Combat entertainment, ma'am. They force captured species to fight each other for sport." The room fell silent. Every person there understood what that meant. Human children, some as young as 7 years old, were being taken to fight and die for alien entertainment. Fleet Admiral Kangmin's voice was deadly quiet when he spoke. "Activate Operation Protective Fury. I want every available ship prepared for immediate deployment." "Sir?" questioned Captain Bora, commander of the flagship Retribution. "That's our entire deep space fleet. 18 ships. Are we sure we need that much firepower?" Kangman looked at her with eyes that had seen too many wars. "Captain, when someone takes our children, we don't send a proportional response. We send an overwhelming one. The galaxy needs to understand that harming human young is not just an attack on us. It's a death sentence for whoever is stupid enough to try." The fleet preparation that followed was the fastest military mobilization in human history. Ships that were scattered across a dozen systems received recall orders. Supply vessels loaded weapons and ammunition at emergency speeds. Marines equipped themselves for boarding actions and ground assault. Captain Bora stood on the bridge of the Retribution, watching her crew prepare for departure. She had served in the fleet for 15 years and had never seen this level of focused anger. Every person on every ship knew what was at stake. "All ships report ready for departure," her navigation officer announced. "Signal the fleet," Bora commanded. "We jump to hyperspace in 30 seconds. Target Thylac Prime." Meanwhile, on Thylac Prime, the situation in the gladiatorial complex was getting worse by the hour. The human children had not only escaped from their individual cells but had somehow managed to free prisoners in the entire section. Wu Jin had figured out how to overload the energy barriers by creating a short circuit with metal scraps and water. The barriers would flicker for just a few seconds, but that was enough time for the children to slip through. Hana had memorized the guard rotation so perfectly that she could predict exactly when each corridor would be empty. She led groups of freed prisoners through the complex like she had lived there her whole life. June had done something even more impressive. He had somehow learned to communicate with the other species using simple gestures and drawings. The Zentorian warriors now followed his tactical suggestions. The VEC engineers helped him understand the complex's technical systems. Arena Master Keithion watched the security monitors in disbelief. An entire section of his facility was now under the control of prisoners, and it had all started with those small creatures from the outer rim. "How is this possible?" he demanded from his security chief. "They're just young animals." "Sir, we've run analysis on their behavior patterns," the security chief replied nervously. "These creatures show tactical intelligence equivalent to trained military officers. Their coordination and planning abilities are beyond anything we've seen in captured species." Keithion felt a growing sense of dread. He pulled up the intelligence files on the system where these creatures had been captured. What he found made him wish he had never heard of the Outer Rim. The system was listed as Kepler 442, home to a human research station, and humans, according to the Galactic database, were classified as a Class 12 Deathworld species. "Oh no," Keithion whispered as he read the file. Deathworld species were the most dangerous in the galaxy. They evolved on planets so hostile that only the strongest and smartest could survive. Their young developed survival instincts that most adult species could never match. He had captured the children of apex predators. The intelligence file got worse as he read further. Humans had never lost a war. They had defeated species with superior technology through tactics, adaptability, and sheer determination. They were known for their protective instincts toward their young, and any species that harmed human children faced complete extinction. Kithion's hands shook as he reached for his communication device. He needed to contact Vorthak immediately and find out exactly what kind of disaster the War Master had brought to their world. In space, the human fleet was making record time toward Thylac Prime. The ships moved in perfect formation, their engines pushed to maximum speed. Every crew member understood the mission. Get their children back no matter the cost. Admiral Sunmi stood in the command center of the Retribution, watching the tactical display. Intelligence reports showed that Thylac Prime was heavily defended with orbital platforms and a large fleet of warships. "Admiral, we're receiving long-range communications from multiple sources," her communications officer reported. "Other species are warning us about Thylac defenses. The Altarian Republic is offering military support. The Vegan Commonwealth wants to send medical ships." Sunmi smiled grimly. "Tell them we appreciate the offers, but this is a human matter. We handle our own children." The truth was that other species had been trying to deal with the Thylac Empire for decades. Their gladiatorial games were considered barbaric by most civilized worlds. But the Thylac military was strong enough to resist outside pressure, but no one had ever threatened human children before. "Admiral, we're detecting Thylac patrol ships ahead," the sensor officer announced. "Signal the fleet," Sunmi ordered. "All ships to combat formation. We're not stopping for anything." The Thylac patrol ships tried to intercept the human fleet, but they were completely outmatched. Human weapons technology was designed for fighting other Deathworld species. Against the Thylac ships, it was like using a sword against paper. The patrol vessels were destroyed so quickly that they barely had time to send warning signals back to Thylac Prime. Back in the gladiatorial complex, the children had accomplished something impossible. They had taken control of 3 entire sections and freed over 800 prisoners. Wujin was now leading raids to capture weapons and equipment. Hana had figured out how to access the complex's computer systems. June was coordinating with freed prisoners to plan a full-scale breakout. The Thylac guards had stopped trying to retake the lost sections. Every attempt had resulted in heavy casualties and no progress. The human children fought like they had been training for war their entire lives. Kithion finally reached Vorthak on the communication system. "War Master, we have a serious problem. The creatures you captured, they're human young." There was a long pause before Vorthak replied. "Humans, the Deathworld species?" "Yes, and according to our intelligence, a human fleet is already on its way here." Another pause, longer this time. "How long do we have?" Kithion checked his displays. Long-range sensors were showing massive hyperspace disturbances approaching their system. "Maybe 6 hours, maybe less." "Then we surrender the creatures and negotiate," Vorthak said. "I don't think you understand," Kithion replied, his voice shaking. "We don't have the creatures anymore. They've taken over half my facility and freed most of our other prisoners, and human fleets don't negotiate when they're young or threatened. They destroy everything." The communication went silent. Both Thylac leaders finally understood the magnitude of their mistake. They had captured the children of the galaxy's most dangerous species. Those children had proven to be more dangerous than most adult warriors, and now the full military might of humanity was coming to take them back. The Thylac Empire was about to learn why no one in the galaxy was foolish enough to threaten human families. The gladiatorial complex on Thylac Prime was massive. From space it looked like a giant metal flower with 8 pointed sections spreading out from a central arena. Each section housed different types of captured creatures, all waiting their turn to fight for the entertainment of the Thylac Empire. Arena Master Kithion walked through the newest arrivals with interest. Vorthak had brought back some unusual specimens this time. The small bipedal creatures were unlike anything in his collection. They stood upright like many intelligent species, but they were so young and fragile-looking. "What are these supposed to be?" Kithion asked, staring at the human children through the energy barriers of their holding cells. "Unknown species from the outer rim," Vorthak replied. "Small, but might have potential. The scanning showed they have good reflexes and problem-solving abilities." Kithion nodded slowly. He had been running gladiatorial games for 20 years and had seen every type of fighter imaginable. These creatures were different, though. Most new arrivals would be huddled in corners, crying or trying to hide. But these small ones were watching everything with sharp, intelligent eyes. Hana pressed her face against the energy barrier, studying the control panel next to her cell. She couldn't read the alien writing, but she could see patterns in the lights and buttons. Everything had a logic to it, and she was good at finding patterns. In the cell next to her, June was talking quietly to the other children. "We need to work together," he whispered. "They think we're animals, so they won't expect us to organize. What's the point?" asked Mira, a 10-year-old girl who had been crying since they arrived. "We're too small to fight their monsters." Wujin spoke up from his larger cell at the end. "We don't fight like they expect us to fight. We're humans. We think differently than anything else in this galaxy." The guards found the conversation strange. Most captured species either couldn't speak at all or made simple sounds when they were scared. But these creatures had complex language and seemed to be making plans. Kithion decided to test them. He had a Thex brought to their section. The Thex was like a bear but with 6 legs and claws as long as knives. It was usually used to terrorize new prisoners and make them easier to control. The energy barrier around the children's area was lowered, and the Thex was pushed inside. The guards expected screaming and panic. Instead, something very different happened. June immediately started giving quiet commands. Hana, get behind the support beam. Wu Jin, can you reach that loose metal plate? The children moved with surprising coordination. They didn't run around screaming like most species would. Instead, they spread out in a pattern that made the Thex confused about which target to attack first. Wu Jin had indeed reached the loose metal plate. With strength that surprised the watching guards, he pulled it free from the wall. The sharp edge gleamed under the arena lights. The Thex charged at Mira, who was closest, but instead of standing still in terror, she dropped and rolled to the side, just as Hana threw a handful of dirt into the creature's eyes. Blinded and angry, the Thex spun around looking for its attackers. That's when Wu Jin struck. He had climbed onto a ledge while the creature was distracted. With perfect timing, he jumped down and drove the metal plate deep into the Thex's neck, right where he had seen the guards' training videos show the weak spot. The Thex collapsed and didn't get up again. The watching guards stood in shocked silence. They had never seen prey animals kill a predator before. Most species could barely defend themselves against a Thex, let alone coordinate an attack that resulted in its death. Kithion felt a chill run down his spine. These weren't normal creatures. The way they had worked together, the tactical thinking, the complete lack of panic in the face of mortal danger. It reminded him of elite military units he had seen in combat footage. Run more tests, he ordered his staff. I want to know everything about these creatures. Over the next few days, the children were given various challenges. They were put in maze-like environments to test their navigation skills. They were given puzzles to solve. They were presented with broken equipment to see if they could fix it. Every test revealed the same thing. These small creatures were incredibly intelligent and adaptable. Hana could solve complex mechanical puzzles in minutes. June showed leadership abilities that impressed even veteran trainers. Wu Jin demonstrated an understanding of technology that seemed impossible for such a young creature. But what worried Kithion most was how they had started to change their environment. Hana had somehow figured out how to make the energy barriers flicker by, throwing water at specific spots. June had organized the children into work groups that accomplished tasks faster than trained adult prisoners. Wu Jin had begun teaching the others how to make tools from the scraps of food and debris in their cells. The other prisoners in nearby cells started to pay attention. A group of Zentorians, captured soldiers from a warrior species, began to watch the human children with growing respect. When Hana managed to pick the lock on her food dispenser using a bone fragment, the Zentorians began to whisper among themselves in their own language. Small ones fight like soldiers, one of them said to his companion. Maybe we follow their lead. The children had also started to study their captors. They watched the guard rotations, memorized the daily schedules, and learned to recognize individual Thylac by their scale patterns and scars. Hana had an especially good memory for details, and had mapped out the entire section of the complex they could see. The guards change every 6 hours, she told the others during one of their quiet planning sessions. But there's always a 10-minute gap when the night shift arrives late. The food delivery system has a manual override, Wu Jin added. I've been watching them use it. If we could get to that control panel, June nodded thoughtfully. We need to think bigger, though. It's not enough to escape our cells. We need to get out of this place entirely. The guards started to notice that something was different about their section. The usual sounds of crying and despair had been replaced by quiet whispers and planning. Other prisoners seemed calmer when they were near the human children. Even the most aggressive species seemed to respond to the children's organized behavior. Kithion reviewed the daily reports with growing concern. In just 1 week, these small creatures had somehow established themselves as leaders among the prisoner population. They had solved every challenge presented to them, and had begun modifying their environment in ways that shouldn't be possible. What exactly did you capture out there? He asked Vorthak. The War Master shrugged. Small creatures from a research station. Nothing special about the location. Standard raid. But Kithian was beginning to suspect there was nothing standard about these prisoners at all. He decided to contact the Thylek Intelligence Division to research the system where these creatures had been found. Something about them felt very, very dangerous. As he walked away from the holding area, he didn't see Hana carefully working on the lock mechanism of her cell with a tool she had made from her food rations. He didn't see June teaching the other children hand signals for silent communication. And he didn't see Wu Jin testing the structural weak points of the energy barriers. The children were no longer just prisoners. They were becoming something much more dangerous. They were becoming an organized resistance force, and they were just getting started. The morning alarm rang through Research Station Aurora, like it did every day for the past 3 years. Commander Taehyun walked through the metal corridors, checking the daily reports on his tablet. The station was home to 500 people, all working to study strange life forms that could survive in the worst conditions. It was good work, important work, but it was also dangerous work this far from Earth. Dr. Yuna looked up from her microscope as Taehyun entered the main lab. "The new samples from the ice caves are showing incredible results," she said with excitement. "These organisms can live in temperatures that would kill anything we know." Taehyun smiled. Yuna always got excited about her work. That was why she was the best scientist on the station. Around them, other researchers worked at their stations, running tests and recording data. The lab was busy but quiet, just the way scientists liked it. In the residential section, children played in the recreation area. Hana, only 7 years old, was building something complex with blocks while explaining her design to the other kids. At 13, June was helping younger children with their homework, showing patience that impressed the adults. Wu Jin, 16 and almost ready for university, was teaching a group how to fix broken toys using spare parts. The families on Aurora had made a real community in space. Parents worked during the day while their children attended school or played together. It was peaceful, safe, and exactly what humans needed when they were so far from home. That peace ended when the alarm started screaming. Taehyun ran to the command center, where his communications officer was already working frantically at her station. "Commander, we have ships approaching fast. They're not responding to our signals." On the main screen, 3 large vessels appeared. They were unlike anything in the human database. The ships looked rough and aggressive, with weapons clearly visible on their hulls. Taehyun had seen pictures of ships like these in intelligence reports. Pirates, slavers, the worst kind of aliens in the galaxy. "Red alert," Taehyun ordered. "All civilians to safe areas. Activate defensive systems." But Aurora was a research station, not a military base. Their defenses were meant to stop asteroids and small debris, not warships. The alien vessels moved closer, ignoring all attempts at communication. The first ship fired. The blast hit Aurora's communication array, cutting them off from the rest of the galaxy. The second blast took out their weak defensive guns. Within minutes, the station was helpless. Boarding pods slammed into Aurora's hull. The metal walls shook as the aliens cut their way inside. Taehyun grabbed his emergency communicator and tried to send a message to Earth. His fingers moved quickly across the controls as he heard fighting in the corridors. "Outside. This is Aurora Station. To Earth Command," he said into the device. "Thylek raiders attacking. Children taken. Position Kepler 442b, avenge us." The door exploded inward. Huge reptilian creatures stormed into the command center, carrying weapons that crackled with energy. Their scales were dark green and their eyes were yellow like a snake's. These were Thylek warriors, and they were known throughout the galaxy for their cruelty. The largest one, covered in scars and wearing armor decorated with bones, pointed his weapon at Taehyun. "No resistance, human. We take what we want." War Master Vorthak had raided dozens of systems and captured thousands of slaves. To him, this was just another easy target. His scanners had shown the station contained the usual mix of adult workers and smaller creatures. The smaller ones would bring good prices in the gladiatorial markets. His soldiers moved through the station with practiced efficiency. They stunned any humans who tried to fight and began sorting their captives. The adults were too large and strong for the games, but the small ones would be perfect. In the recreation area, Hana held tight to her building blocks as strange aliens surrounded the children. June stepped in front of the younger kids, trying to protect them even though he was scared. Wu Jin looked around desperately for something he could use as a weapon, But the aliens were too fast. The Thylac soldiers used strange devices that made the children fall asleep. One by one, the kids collapsed until only silence remained in the room that had been full of laughter just minutes before. Dr. Yuna tried to run to the residential section when she heard the children screaming, but alien soldiers blocked her way. She watched helplessly as they carried unconscious children toward their ships. "Please," she begged. "They're just children. They can't hurt anyone." The Thylac soldier looked at her with confusion. "Small creatures for arena. Good fighters when trained. You keep adult ones." Yuna realized with horror that the aliens thought the children were a different species. They didn't understand that human children were the young of the adult humans. To them, the kids were just small animals that might be entertaining in their fighting pits. 23 children were loaded into transport cages aboard the Thylac ship Blood Harvest. Hana woke up first, finding herself in a metal box barely big enough for her to stand. Through the bars, she could see other children in similar cages. Some were crying. Others were too scared to make any sound at all. June's cage was next to hers. When he woke up, he immediately started checking on the other kids. "Everyone stay calm," he whispered. "We need to figure out where we are and how to get out." Wu Jin was in a larger cage at the end of the row. His cage was bigger because the aliens thought he might be a different type of creature. He was already examining the lock mechanism, running his fingers along the metal to understand how it worked. The Thylac guards found the human children interesting. Most species they captured would cower in fear or cry helplessly. But these small creatures were watching everything, learning, planning. Some of the guards began to feel uncomfortable under the steady gaze of 7-year-old Hana. Vorthak stood in his command center, satisfied with the successful raid. The adult humans had been left behind as requested by his employers, who only wanted the small fighting creatures. The Blood Harvest was now heading to Thylac Prime, where the arena masters would train these new acquisitions. He had no idea that his scanners had failed to detect Taehyun's emergency transmission. The message had been sent in a burst of compressed data just before the communication array was destroyed. Somewhere in space, that desperate plea for help was racing toward Earth at the speed of light, and he had no idea that he had just made the worst mistake in Thylac history.